right, welcome back to the Kingdom Life Unfiltered. I am your host, Janine Marino, and I'm so excited to talk to my new friend, Christina here. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Christina is a wife and mother of two dynamic girls and two lively boys. Together with her husband, she finds joy in curating family memories through travel and new adventures. A passionate advocate for home education and intentional family culture. I just love this. Christina coaches mothers and hosts conferences for homeschooling moms, inspiring them to thrive with vision, purpose, and joy. A lover of beautiful books, she treasures the works of Jane Austen, relates to Amy March, and owns multiple copies of the Laura Ingalls Wilder series. Known for her love of fancy coffee and spicy Thai food, I love spicy Thai food, Christina believes that motherhood has been her greatest and most joyful adventure. Oh my goodness. I love it all. Welcome, Christina. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to do this.
Yes, me too. Well, tell me a little bit more about you. Tell me a little bit about your background and just like what led you to homeschooling and this intentional family culture.
Okay, that's a really loaded question, but I'm going to kind of try to unpack that a little bit. Okay, so I grew up in a turbulent upbringing. I had a turbulent household. I'm the oldest daughter. Actually, I grew up with two younger sisters, and so I'm the oldest in general. And then as I was growing up, I knew that I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That's just something that I was so passionate about. And I wanted to really change the culture and the dynamic from what I had and have something better moving forward. And so being a stay-at-home mom was always on my heart. And so when I had my first daughter and I was talking to my best friend, and she was like, I was about 21 at this point, and she was like, hey, I'm gonna homeschool, my daughter. And I was like, you can do that? Like, I guess I never actually knew anybody who was homeschooled. Usually where I was from in Washington State, most of the people that I knew that were homeschooled, it was more of like an assimilation, like maybe they moved from a different country and they were like still in the process of trying to get used to the area or the language, or maybe there was some health issues or concerns. And so when she told me about home education, I was like, I knew right then and there. My daughter was 10 months old, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I saw that as an extension of motherhood. So that's how I got on this journey. And I've been homeschooling for about 14 years now. I just graduated my oldest daughter. And so that story is twofold. That's how I got into homeschooling, and also why I feel so passionate about having intentional family culture, because growing up, I didn't have that. And so I knew that, like I said, moving forward and for my own family, that's what I wanted to curate.
Oh, that's so good. I love that you like knew all along that you were going to homeschool. How amazing is that to just know right off the bat? I had no idea that people, I honestly, when I first heard about homeschooling, someone was like, well, maybe you should homeschool. And I thought, crazy people homeschool. I don't want to be that weird family. And it was literally like a light switch went off in my head, and God was like, you're going to homeschool. And I homeschooled like 2 months later.
I love that. I love that you're like, I don't want to be that weird. What I've noticed though is like everybody has their own weirdness.
Totally.
So, you know, yeah, everybody's a little bit weird.
Oh yeah. I honestly, I think in my head, I had a picture of what a homeschool family was, and I was like, that's not us. But when it comes down to it, I love being a weird homeschool family. I don't want to be normal. Why would I want to
Yeah.
be that?
It's funny that you say that. I've told this story several times, and I've never thought about it the way you just said. You said I had a picture in my head of what a homeschool family was. And like, I didn't have a picture in my head of what a homeschool family looked like. And so as you say that, like, I got to paint that picture. And then obviously, as I told people, there was that input of like, this is what this is, and the stereotypes that go with it. But because I wasn't like exposed to that and I didn't have that, I got to create that. And so I guess I've never pieced that together until you said it that way.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I love that. And I think it's so important to paint our own picture. I think when I first started, first off, I didn't know anyone that homeschooled. So I had put a picture in my head from like, I don't even know where it came from, to be honest. And I was really interesting trying to figure it out before, because we've been homeschooling for about 12 years. So just almost as long. So like before COVID, before it was popular, before it was like trending.
Right.
And just trying to figure it out, like, what are we doing? How are we doing it? Like, starting with, like, I think I'm doing school at home to, morphing it into just a beautiful life. I love that you are just all about being intentional with family time. And so I'd love to hear a little bit of your journey and what does that really look like?
Okay, so I'm trying to, it's one of those things where like when someone's like, "Hey, can you tell me how you breathe?" You know what I mean? It's like I feel like this has just become a part of me that I'm trying to like break it down. Like where did this start? Where did this come from? And other than that origin story of my upbringing that I said, I feel like I really started walking this out maybe about a decade ago. I had some other things happen in my personal life that really rocked me and really robbed me of peace and joy. And sometimes circumstances can do that. And sometimes we can partner with that and allow those circumstances to do that. And to be honest, I did. I did allow those circumstances to steal more joy and peace from me than I should have, honestly. But once I came out of that and I was like processing some of these external circumstances, and I knew I wanted to move forward in peace and joy, and I was leaning into the Lord. I know that a lot of people for the new year, they like to have a word, right? Like, what is going to be the word of the year? And I've had several different words, right? But I feel like one year I chose the word intentionality. And I'm going to say I chose the word because, you know, sometimes I feel like God impresses something on us. And sometimes I do think that we choose it. And I don't feel as much as like he told me to do that. Because there's been other times where he has. I feel like I was just like, you know what? I need to do this. Like it was a reflection of like, man, I need this. And it was the best year ever. I lived with such intention in so many different areas. And I still look back on that and I'm like, man, I was just sold out to this. And so that's, I feel like kind of where it started is where I just saw such fruit in my family and in myself and in what I was doing. And it was just, it's a mindset shift because intentionality, it's mindset. And then obviously the processes that follow that, you know, in application, but it was such a mindset shift and a growth mindset shift that it just really blessed me and my family.
Gosh, I love that. I feel like we are very intentional about just how we spend our time and how we plan out our life. And homeschooling has given us the opportunity to do that because it gives you the freedom to really design your life with intentionality. And so I love that you said it's like a mindset shift because it really is. You can't necessarily put a like, okay, this is how you be intentional because it's going to look different for everyone. That's the point of it is like you're really designing your life to be this specific thing that is important to you, and it might not be important to someone else in that way.
And the intentionality, sorry, I'm getting all, you know, if you're listening to this, I'm like jumping out of my seat because I'm just so passionate about this. And I had some caffeine, it's fine. But I feel like with that, to piggyback off of what you said, that intentionality also looks different in different seasons. So, for example, I think that sometimes when we hear intentionality, we're thinking of building momentum. We're thinking, oh, we got to do more, we got to do more. And sometimes intentionality means actually doing less, like a paradox, and like going deeper or like a restful, soulful state. So, for example, the way we home educate is we have like a rhythm through the year. And I have like a first semester where we build momentum. But then once we hit our winter term, we like pull back and it's just this, I call it rest review in relationship, and it's just a different intentionality and atmosphere that I bring to the homeschool and to our family that just changes the dynamic. Now, but people are always like, oh, so you're doing less. It's not really less, it's just different, and the intentionality is just different, and it brings like a rest to our soul. So if you're out there and you're like, okay, I'm hearing intentionality, I gotta do this, and I gotta plan, I gotta do all this. That's not exactly what I mean by that. It's just living with vision and with purpose.
Yeah, for sure. And also a bit of like a prayerful mindfulness almost like to where
Right.
you're just being present as well and not rushing around. And so how do you structure like how do you balance, I guess, that and being intentional with structure and like structuring your life and your days and all of that?
Because I do home education coaching, and because
Okay.
I'm like I homeschool, and then I have some other things that I'm doing, and I'm thinking about all of these plates and stuff that I'm juggling that might look a little bit different in different areas. But if I just apply it to my general life. I would say that the intentionality comes with, I think presence is the most important thing. And also for me, I am a busy person and I go, but also carving out time to scale back and refresh my soul. And that's going to look different for different people. And so just being aware, I think, of what I need and
Yeah.
what my children need, and what my husband needs and what our family needs. So I guess to sum it up, it would just be like an awareness and being attuned to the temperature of what my family needs and myself, if that makes sense. So for example, I just got back from a conference that I did in San Diego. I host a homeschool conference for mothers called Bloom and Blossom, and it was my first one out of state. And I have been for months just going, have a hard time turning my brain off. And the other day, I just sat down and I read a book for hours, and I did it in like right in this room, like in front of my kids, and my husband did the laundry and my kids were doing schoolwork. It was on a Saturday. And like there were so many other things that I could have done, but it was an intentionality where I was like, I saw a need in myself and I was intentional about doing that. And I was also modeling to my kids like, hey, it's okay to like sit here and do, what looked like probably nothing because I was in my pajamas and looked atrocious all day. But you know what I mean? Like it was the best day. And so I was intentional to carve that out.
Yeah, I love that. It's just like the Sabbath. I mean, you really have to intentionally take the time to rest as well. And so I love that you are really modeling that too for your kids and making sure that even though you could be busy and you could be doing all the things that you're stopping and slowing down too, because it's not just about, go. And I'm like that too. I have to actually schedule time to rest. Otherwise I won't.
And that's actually what my kids see from me more often than not, is that I'm going. But I also think that, I mean, they're not moms, so they don't actually understand what all goes into this. So, this motherhood gig's not for the faint of heart, right? So there's a lot that goes into it. And so, but in general, they're going to grow up though, and they're going to have wives, and they're going to have, their own children. I have boys and girls, and I want them to be able to, in hindsight, be like, I saw my mom do this, but I also saw my mom do this. It can be dynamic. And so intentionality can look a variety of different ways. Another way that we are super intentional, and I think you and I might share a similarity here, is we really like adventures. And so I will schedule that in our school year. I will do our school around adventures. A lot of times they're educational adventures because it's really important to us. And honestly, the best memories have come from those type of adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's our life right there.
It is. I know. That's what I was like. I mean, I'm not quite as cool as you. Like I would love to, to have that type of thing. My husband has a very nice job here. It's a great job and I love it. And I feel so thankful, but like my heart, I could live out of a suitcase really.
Yeah, it's fun, but I'll be honest. I mean, there comes a time where like we actually are craving routine right now. We've been moving so fast. This whole year, we've been moving so fast. And we've been here for like 2 months, but we are excited. We're renting a house in Florida for like 5 months, and we're really excited about it. We're excited to hunker down for a little bit and just have some, normal.
I love that too. See, you're being intentional.
Totally. And it's important to do that. It's important to know too that we have different seasons. And so I love that you do like the rhythms with the seasons because I mean, we have seasons like built into our year, right? But there's also seasons of life and things don't always look the same. Like whether you have a new baby or, sometimes there might be, somebody going through some health crisis or there may be some, different dynamics that you have to work around. And I think it's important to recognize those and to know that life is going to look different at those times and homeschool is going to look different at those times too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how your faith has influenced how you approach like motherhood and education.
Okay, I love that. So my faith has impacted my motherhood and my education in actually a really unique way. And it's actually one of the things that I coach people on. And so the way that I look at my entire life is through this eternal perspective. And I like to use the word eternal objective when I'm talking with my clients, and specifically when it's about home education. But this is applicable to even if you don't homeschool, right? So when you're looking at your family, this is in my motherhood, right? At the end of the day, my kids are going to be grown. And at the end of the day, this is where this intentionality comes in. What do I want them to say about their homeschool journey? What do I want them to say about their childhood? What do I want them to say about their family experience, right? And so if I know that I want them to say these things, I want them to say that my mother was intentional, right? That my mother cared, that she saw me, that she curated something specific to me so that way I felt seen, and that she wanted a strong relational family culture, right? If these are things that are important to me, what eternal objectives can I go after? So eternal objectives to me look like, at the end of the day, like, do my kids practice the fruits of the spirit? Are my kids do they have a sibling relationship with each other? Do my kids know God, and do they want to make him known? Like, these are those eternal objectives. And so that zooming out and understanding that is the eternal, that is legacy building, not only present on earth, but legacy building into the eternal too. That is at the forefront of how I parent and how I home educate.
Yeah, so good. It's so important to keep in mind what our kids are really like, the fruit that's coming out of them. Like, that starts from their heart, like that starts from their thoughts, that starts from their surroundings. And it's so important to keep an eye on it too, and not just, kind of shake it off like, oh, it's a phase, or they'll get over it, or whatever it may be, because we have only so much time to sow into them, and it just really makes a huge difference. And so we are really intentional about how we homeschool. And I know we talked about this a little bit beforehand about how you're like, I want to raise leaders. And that's our thing too, is like, we want to raise each of our boys to have their own business before they graduate high school. We want them to be entrepreneurs, self-sufficient and creators, and be out there not following the pack, but leading. So I love that you are just really looking at the bigger picture as far as the eternal impact that you're making starts in your home, right?
Yeah. And I love that about you too. Will you remind me how old your boys are?
So my oldest is 20, and then I have a 15-year-old. I have twins that are almost 11, and then my youngest is 7.
Okay, awesome. All
Yeah.
boys. We have similar ages. I have 18, 14, 13, and 11. So I don't have that little one on the end, but some of those in between. But that's cool. Yeah, I agree with you about the leadership part of that. So back to the intentionality, I feel like these people, people are going to be so sick of me saying this by the end of it, but it's so true. Like, if you live your life with intentionality, you will start seeing that fruit because you're being intentional. Like, if you had a garden, you have to go out there and you have to sow it. There's an intentionality. You have to know when is the right time. There's a research that goes into it. So part of our family culture and a pillar in our household is being a leader. And so whenever we go anywhere, even when they were little, it was like, hey, before we go to this play date, or before we go to church, or before we do this, look for somebody that you can serve today, right? That's what being a leader is. So how can you serve? And we also are really, really passionate about leaving people better than we found them. And sometimes that really just looks like smiling and being kind to somebody. It really does. It can change somebody's entire day. Or sometimes it's keeping your mouth closed when somebody's not very nice to you. You know what I mean? And that's hard. That's hard for me too, honestly. But sometimes that just looks different than I think. It doesn't always mean, doing extravagant things. Sometimes it's the small things that can make the most difference, especially over time, of refining our own character. And then, like I said, trying to extend that, let's leave people better than we found them.
I know one of our core pillars is mission. That is really our heart, is to be on mission. So our kids serve alongside us on mission trips. And so it's so amazing to see how it affects them too, of when they are going out and they are serving someone or leaving them better than they were before. I just love watching how it shapes them. Like it shapes their character into someone that is really going to go that extra mile and really going to be that servant leader like Jesus. And so I think that's beautiful.
I love that. We have not yet had the opportunity to experience a mission together as a family. A friend of mine just did that with her two kids. They went down to Guatemala, and I could even see her kids are already wonderful. They are just delightful and they love to serve, but I could even see a change in them when they came back. You know what I mean? And so I think that's so powerful and so wonderful to be able to do alongside your family.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and it's something that you can do too, like where you are, whether you're just serving the homeless or at a soup kitchen or, things like that too. We used to do
We,
that when my kids were
yeah,
young.
we do local things like that
Yeah.
too. I
Yeah.
just mean like being like out in
Right.
a field, like
Yeah.
the exposure of like over days type of a thing.
For sure, for sure. It is fun, but I think you can do it anywhere you are. I don't think you have to necessarily travel outside of the country to have that experience.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
So tell me a little bit about how do you encourage moms who feel burnt out or like they've lost themselves in the midst of motherhood?
Burned out is hard because I feel like we're trying to escape being burnt out. And to be honest, sometimes I don't know if it's something we can escape because depending on the story. So, like, I have so many different women that sit in front of me and so many different stories. And with some of their stories, it's like, well, just like if you did this, you wouldn't be burnt out. And that's not always true. I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm just saying I feel like collectively people have this like how to avoid burnout. Sometimes you're in a season where external circumstances are coming at you, and that's just part of being human. Like you are going to be burnout. So just establishing the definition and the parameters that go around with burnout. I think it's more of like, okay, if you're not quite in burnout yet, how can we avoid that? I do think that those steps are helpful. But if you are in burnout, how can we still have joy in this? So that's more of the processes and mindset that I work with some of my clients. I also think that when we recognize that life is hard, and if we recognize and manage our expectations, this is going to step on some people's toes, but if we manage our own expectations and expect it to be hard, I think walking through fire and walking through things doesn't burn us out in the same way, because we have a perspective and a mindset of like, I can do hard things. This was not guaranteed to be easy. I don't want to look over at my friend's life over here and see it like that and wish that I had that. I think copy and comparison is seriously a thief of joy. And so I think when we can just really recognize that life honestly is sanctifying, it strengthens us for our journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And it talks about that too in the Bible about how it's going to be hard, but if we endure it, it's just going to make us better and stronger. And then we will be complete and not needing, to go through that. And also, I think too, social media has really had an impact on that because everyone has this highlight reel. I mean, people look at our life all the time and they're like, oh, you guys do this and you do that. And it's like, do you have any idea like how hard our life is? I mean, it would be so much easier to just live in a house and send my kids to school. I mean, I'm just being honest. I don't know about sending them to school. We've homeschooled longer than we traveled, but that I feel like that would be really hard. But we're in situations all the time that are uncomfortable. That's actually one of the reasons that I love being able to do this with my kids. And this is a season for us. I mean, we've been doing this for a couple of years and we won't do it forever. But it's a season of, honestly, they're learning resilience and flexibility, and they're also getting exposed to some things that sometimes I wish they weren't exposed to because, we're in lots of different situations. And who knew that in Athens there was going to be like a street we drove down where people were shooting up? Like I couldn't have told you that was going to happen, and they saw that, like, so there are things that happen. And so I just feel like everyone's always wishing that their life was different or waiting for that next thing, or like, oh, it'll be better when this happens, and then they miss out on this beautiful season when their kids are little and things are messy and inconvenient, but it's messy and inconvenient in other ways later. Yeah.
I think that's where like managing our expectations is really huge, because if you can sit and be like, okay, why, if like, let's say something's happening and you're like, why am I so upset in this situation? And a lot of times it can come back to we're upset, because we thought this was going to be the outcome and it's not going that way. And whether that's with something we're doing in ourselves or whether it's something that somebody else is doing. And a lot of times, like, we are looking over at other people. And that can definitely rob us of joy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and not only that, but also the story we tell ourselves, because we can go through hard things and we can come out the victor or the victim, and it's really up to us to decide. And so I think that's an important lesson to teach our kids as well, and for them to watch us walk through.
That's huge. That's absolutely huge.
What does legacy mean to you as a mother, as a leader, as a homeschool mom, as a coach?
Legacy to me is leaving something behind that inspires other people. And that when people, for me, I'm just going to kind of talk this out because I actually haven't been asked that specifically. So you guys are hearing this authentically. I feel like, for example, in my family, I'm wanting to leave a legacy of to know God and to make him known. I want to, for lack of better way to, use this analogy, I'm literally raising my arrows and I'm going to launch them. And I want that to be my legacy. Like, I want them to say, my mom did this, my dad did this, and they set us up for this. And I want there to be a spiritual legacy, right? But I also want to set them up in other ways too, like for their own lives. And I want them to have like emotional health. And I want them to be prepared for moving into the next phase of their life. And so I view that as a part of that legacy. I think it all kind of goes together. Again, like I've mentioned before, I didn't really come from anything like that. And so and neither really did my husband. And so we are literally starting like our own branch and, trying to move that forward. So it's really important for us because it feels very like a mantle that we're carrying, right? Like we want to move this forward, or like a torch, if you will, in like the Olympics. Like, so for us, it's just this moving forward and then like inspiring the people ahead of us to do the same and to do better, honestly, because, that's the goal.
Yeah, I love that. You're like pioneering for your family. I feel like we're doing the same thing because neither of us came from that either. And so it's really breaking the chains and changing the generations ahead. And so, well, I think you are doing a wonderful job. And I can't wait to see what your kids do and just how they all like step into their own and go out there and be that bright light, because we just need more of them for sure. More arrows in the world. So I love that you are doing that. And I love that you are coaching other moms to do that as well. So can you tell us a little bit about how you help moms?
Yeah, I want to real quick touch on one thing that you said about training up our children and, preparing them to be arrows and launched. There is one thing that I feel like I'm, as I'm coming to this other side of like parenthood, where I'm about to have I have like a bunch of teenagers and children that are going into adulthood. I think something that's not talked about enough I live in the Midwest. It's the Bible Belt. So I feel like this is not talked about enough, is that let's say you are pouring this into your children and they still choose to turn a different way.
Yeah.
I don't believe that that's something that is like on you, and that I feel like a lot of times we look at other parents and are like, well, they failed them here, here, and here. There does become a time where their faith is their own. Mm-hmm. There does come a time where they have to have ownership over their choices and they get to choose. It's called free will. And so as much as we pour into them, at the end of the day, they're in charge of that. So I only hope and pray that my children will pass on that torch and keep going. But you know what? If they don't, I trust that God will fill in those gaps where I've messed up, because I'm a human. And I also pray that God will reach out to them and get their hearts in one time or another. So it doesn't always have to be on us, because God is so much bigger than that.
Absolutely. And sometimes they need to fall away from their faith to find it in their own way, in a deeper way. And so,
right.
And just because they walk away or they step back from their faith doesn't mean they're not going to come back, because you raised them, you put that on their heart, you wrote that on their heart. And so yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think it's important too, and I feel like this is another thing that is not talked about a lot, as kids are growing into the teenage years. Back in the day, teens were adults. Like, we actually have like dumbed them down because of a lot of different things that happen in history, actually. But I feel like it's so
Yes.
important to start coming alongside of them more than over them. I mean, don't get me wrong. My 15-year-old wants to go evangelize somewhere that's like dangerous and he could get killed. I have been telling him no. So I'm still going to say no,
Yes.
not make that decision. But in most circumstances, like I'm not trying to like, shake my head at him or tell him what he can or can't do. I really want him to come into his own and start making his own decisions and being able to make mistakes while he lives with us and while I can be here to like come alongside him and let him grow because we're raising adults. We're not raising teens. I think that's important too. Anyways.
100% agree with you. And like I said, I'm having conversation, not wanting to evangelize in scary situations, but I'm also having similar experiences where maybe their prefrontal cortex is wanting them to do decisions that are not quite great. And so yes, I'm violently agreeing with you on that.
Yeah, it's a new territory I'm stepping into. But anyways, tell me a little bit about how can people work with you and what do to when you coach women?
Okay, so the main thing that I do, so I'm a motherhood and home education coach. And so the reason why I have those together is because I can't just coach people just when it's, with motherhood situations or concerns or goals, even, but also with home education too. And with home education, it is motherhood and home education combined because you don't just wear your mom hat and then your teacher hat or your mom hat, you're wearing them at the same time. And so I primarily work with moms to establish vision, mission, and just focusing on their goals and concerns and rhythms in their household. But honestly, I've literally done it all. I do a lot of different things. So if you are interested in working with me, you can reach out to me on my website, which is www.christinacarpenter.org, and go ahead and fill out a contact sheet or a contact form on there, and I will go ahead and get back to you. But yeah, that's the main thing that I do. But like I said, everybody is so unique and they bring something different to the table. And so I don't ever want to put like, this is only what I do. It could look so different because I want to meet my clients where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, as we are wrapping up, what final piece of encouragement would you like to share with any mom that is listening today to wants to live more intentionally?
I would say put it on the calendar. I think a lot of times we start having these ideas and it's like, well, I want to do this, or I want to do this, or I want to do this. It would be put it on the calendar. And then the other piece of advice that I would say with that is, let's say you're saying, I want to read my Bible 5 times a day, or 5 times a week, right? Every morning. And if you're already not doing that, then maybe don't start there. Maybe start 1 time a week. You know what I mean? Like those small type of goals. So 1, put it on the calendar. 2, manage your expectations in a way that you're making realistic goals.
Tell me a little bit about your homeschool events. What are those all about? How can people find out more about it?
Okay, this is something that has been such a fun part of my journey. So I host mainly homeschool conferences, but I also do workshops, other type of events, but it's called Bloom and Blossom. So my coaching is Authentic Join the Journey. And the conference part is Bloom and Blossom. And if you actually look at my logo, it's a compass. It's actually made by a homeschool mom. It's really cute. If you look at the logo, it's like a compass, and half of it is the floral side and half of it is like the compass. And so the reason I had her do that is both things that I do share the same goal: to equip, encourage, and empower. And so with the Authentic Join the Journey is more of the coaching, and then Bloom and Blossom is more of the workshops and the events. So the event that I have coming up right now will be in Springfield, Missouri. It's February 27th and 28th. It's actually called the Evergreen Retreat. I'm very excited. This is the first time I've done a retreat like this. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm about to launch registration actually probably today or tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, definitely send me the links on that. I'll put that all in the show notes. And gosh, thank you so much for joining me. This has been so much fun and it's been so great getting to know you. And I'm excited to follow along and get to check out your event sometime. That would be fun to come to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me.
Of course. All right, guys, we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us today and make sure you go follow Christina.
Thank you.